Hello, good morning for those of us, those who are watching us in Brazil, across Brazil, and then of course, good afternoon to those who are based in the UK. Thank you very much for attending this session organized by the British Chamber of Commerce in Brazil. I am Paula Vitelli, President at the Chamber, and I'm very pleased to be here in this session covering such an important topic, which is investments in such a relevant sector. Happy to see that one of our most recent committees at the Chamber, which is the Mining Committee, has been very active in organizing very relevant discussions in this sector, in this area. Britcham's mission is to be the reference of the UK-Brazil business community, providing forums to foster bilateral trade, investment services, and networking opportunities. Our offices are located in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, Paraná, and Minas Gerais, and being part of the Chamber, being a member here is an opportunity to engage with companies and executives in Brazil and in the UK. The Chamber operates through committees, so sector committees covering specific industries, but also themes across industries. I'd like to invite those of you who are watching us to visit our website at britcham.com.br to learn more about the Chamber. Then I'd like to thank Britcham support members whose brands have been publicized just before we started this session. Then I'd like to thank Thomas Nemes and Adriano Trindade, President and Vice President of the Britcham Mining Committee. And of course, I'd like to thank our speakers in this session, Mr. Pedro Paulo Dias Mesquita, National Secretary for Geology, Mining and Mineral Transformation, Mr. Mike Hodgson, CEO at Serabi Gold, and Mr. Jonathan Dunn, Head of International Policy and UK Government Relations at Anglo-American. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and being here in such a relevant session with such an important discussion. I'd like to wish you all a great session, a great conversation, and then I'll pass this on to Thomas Nemes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ana Paula. To those in Brazil, good morning, and to those in the UK, good afternoon. Really appreciate all your time, especially in the UK during your lunchtime. This is a great opportunity for us to be discussing developments in the Brazilian mining sector to an international audience, particularly an Anglo-Brazilian audience. So very much looking forward to this session. And I'd like to also recognize Ana Paula for her leadership in all her work as president of the British Chamber of Commerce in Brazil. Us as members, Ana Paula and the leadership team work is fundamental to make sure we have these fantastic opportunities for these important business and government engagements. Thank you as well to the Britcham staff for all the support in putting together this webinar. Thank you to our supporters as well in promoting this event, the British government in Brazil, DIT, the Department of International Trade, the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in the UK, and also Canning House. I'd like to just quickly reflect on, as Ana Paula mentioned, the recently constituted mining committee in Britcham and talk a bit about our objectives. We established the committee at the beginning of this year, and we're looking to develop a long-term forum for discussion and positively contribute to the sector. I think one fundamental point is for us to bring informations and opportunities about the Brazilian mining sector to a UK-based business audience, but also vice versa, obviously. bring to a Brazilian audience opportunities in the UK and in the UK investor and mining community. Also, we'd like to positively and impactfully contribute to key discussions and themes in the Brazilian mining sector, from ranging from issues to sustainability, to good governance and good practice on operational safety. There's only a few topics among others. Obviously, the chamber is here to support its members' interests. And as the committee develops, we'll be able to continue to develop an even more robust program of activity, contributing to the development of the Brazilian mining sector. I'd like to also make special mention to Adriano Trindade, who with me is leading the mining committee. Adriano is a distinguished lawyer in Brazil with much experience in the mining sector. And myself, it's a real pleasure and an honor to be leading the mining committee. For those that don't know me, my day job, I am the institutional relations manager at Anglo-American Brazil, where we have operations, iron ore and nickel operations. And the focus of today, folks, is really to have an important engagement and really a listening session with the National Secretary for Mining in Brasilia, in the federal government, in the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Mr. Pedro Dias has an important role in being the focal point of the Brazilian government on all matters relating to mining, in the government's priorities on mining, in developing the mining sector, in developing the regulatory agenda, obviously, which piece of work which is led by the Brazilian Mining Agency, and also developing the sector across the country. Obviously, it's a very big country, and really there's a fantastic potential in mining that I think there's in this century that we're in, Brazil will have a big role to play in supplying key commodities to the global economy, and especially in key segments such as the clean energy transition and the decarbonization of the global economy. A few housekeeping rules briefly. It's a short session, so we're going to stick to the allotted time of an hour. As you may be aware, this is being live streamed both on Zoom and YouTube. We will be also making available a link on YouTube following the presentation, should anyone want to listen once again or share with others the link, and please feel free. And while we'll be listening, especially from the Secretary, and I'll soon hand over to him, we also have invited two member companies of Britcham, as Ana Paula mentioned, Serabi Gold and Anglo-American, for them to share their perspectives as British investors and UK-based investors in Brazil. In the case of Serabi Gold, is a junior mining company operating in the north of Brazil, and in the case of Anglo-American, a major player in the mining sector with tradition in the Brazilian mining sector, to give their perspective also of the investment experience and the opportunities and challenges in the sector. Should we have time, which we expect to have time, we'll have a brief Q&A session directed to the Secretary, and our other panelists will field some questions. Should we have time, we will also pose one another question posed by you, the audience, via the Zoom or YouTube chat. So please feel free to interact on the chat function as well. And as you do, please mention your name and company before sending the question so we can identify you. Thank you very much. And so continuing, Mr. Secretary, Pedro, it's a great privilege and an honor to have us with you today. We thank you very much for your time in this busy schedule of the end of the year. You've taken on the role of Secretary a few months ago, a very important role, and we in the sector are very pleased with your appointment. You're not new to the sector. When you were at the Brazilian Development Bank recently, you were firmly involved in the sector and already contributing in a very important way. I think we have a very capable and competent person ahead of the Secretariat for Mining, Geology, and Mineral Transformation. We're very much looking forward to hearing from you today, Pedro. So I'd like to please hand over to you and feel free to take the time you need for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Ana Paula. Hello.
We're hearing you well, Pedro. Please continue.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you all. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Ana Paula. Thank you, Britcham, for receiving me here. It's a pleasure to be here with you and talk a little bit about what we believe that will be the next movements of mining in Brazil. And actually what's already happening here in our country. I'll talk a little bit about this. And I hope I can transmit to you all the expectancy and how enthusiastic we are about the growth that we're expecting for Brazilian mining in the next few years. So I'm gonna share a presentation. You can say when you'll be able to see it.
Secretary, we're seeing your screen now.
Yeah, just
in case you'd like to put it in presentation mode.
yeah, let me just see if it. Stop share.
Perfect.
The presentation?
Yeah, very well.
So, okay, very good. So I'll start my presentation talking about engagement and growth. That's what we are already watching happening in Brazil. So first of all, in order to show a little bit of the context of Brazil international market, I'd like to explore not just mining, but also energy and how Brazilian mining energy is positioned in the world. So we are the 7th largest oil producer, the 7th largest oil exporter in the world, 2nd largest producer in consumer market, 4th largest automotive fuel market, 7th largest installed capacity, 2nd largest hydroelectric generation in the world, 2nd largest iron ore producer, and 9th largest mineral producer. I like to introduce the presentation with this slide so as to show the potential and how Brazil was able to build a very huge capacity in a lot of sectors, structured sectors in the many years. So for now, I'll talk a little bit in these topics. Not gonna take much of your time, and we're gonna explore them very objectively. So about regulation and our ongoing policies, we are proud of talking about a comprehensive and stable policy aligned for sustainable growth. So Brazil has faced some challenge in the near past and was able to fix it and was able to deliver new rules and new processes so as to align our systems and our market for sustainable growth. And I say that because of what we've been doing in all the governance of the sector since 2017. So it's not that new, but it was a great time a great period of time for improvement of our rules and process. So we installed our national mining agency that's already working with the digitization in processing of mineral concession. We could watch also a strengthened transparency in regulatory governance. So the agency is able to conduce their regulations with a lot of engagement of the society, of the companies, talking much closer with the business. And we had also in 2018 a mining code reform. So we had a modernization of our code. And I always like to bring two specific points that was brought to this code. That is the use of internationally recognized standards of disclosure for mineral projects and safe process for mineral rights as collateral. So we are building this together. And also about sustainability and safety, we improved our rules for the inspection and safety of tail dams. So Brazil now has one of the most improved and conservative rules for the safety of tail dams. And we are sure that with these policies and these changes, we were able to achieve more predictability, more dynamism, certainty, and sustainability of our sector. About the results, I like to present Brazilian total investment of mining sector forecast for 2021 to 2025. So it's expected investment about $41 billion. And it's a huge growth when we compare with the forecast we had for 2017 to 2021, that it was about $18 billion. So we have more than 2 times the investment expected for the few next years. We are talking also about the highest exploration investment since 2012. We reached this number in 2020, and we expected an even bigger number for now 21. I'm talking about also the growth of production that is reflected in the royalties of the government. We had a huge improvement of production, of the value of the production here in Brazil. Of course, it was impacted by the price rise, but also by the rise of the production in quantity. And about mining balance of trade, Brazil has a huge surplus in the balance trade of mining products, and we had a huge growth from 2020 to 2021. So I also bring here some policies that we are leading for bringing to the market new areas and some rights that you were not able for research investments or for the development of mines. So we already brought to the market more than 16,000 areas that were available and were kind of locked in the process, in the previous process that we had, the bureaucratic that we had on the managing of these areas. So we were able to deliver these areas to the market. We were expecting to deliver at least more 20,000 new areas. And we are also able to make 8 auctions for rights of our geological survey that is called CPRM, Serviço Geológico do Brasil. And we expect more than 400 million investments related to these 8 auctions. We already made 2 of them with a huge success, and I expect to make 6 more. I also like to add a number that I got just yesterday. We have another policy that is called Pro Strategic Minerals, and that is a policy that is dedicated to help the business to accelerate and improve the parameters of their environmental license. So we have, it's a recent policy. It's operating since June of this year, and we have already 12 projects, some of them very big in this policy, and we are already conducting conversations so as to accelerate the environmental license of this project. So about investment forecasts, I talked about this, about the growth that we had for our forecasts, and this number is mainly for iron ore, aluminum, fertilizers, and copper, and it also includes huge investments in ESG and logistics. I like also to point some numbers about the exploration investment itself. And when I bring this slide, I focus only in minerals for green energy. So these minerals that are here listed in the right side. And for these minerals, we can observe a huge growth of exploration investments in Brazil, also showing that Brazil is a very good opportunity for the market to bring to the industry the new materials and the minerals that we need for the transaction for a green economy. And also talking about sustainability, I couldn't not mention how clean is our energy matrix. So Brazil already has 44% of total energy matrix of renewable source. When compared to the world, we are talking of more than 3 times the percentage of worldwide about the participation of renewable source in the energy matrix. When we talk about electric matrix, then the number is much higher. We're talking about 85% of renewable source. So Brazil has one of the world cleanest energy and electric matrix in the world, and this is of course one of our competitive advantages that we bring to the market now, and that is day by day more important because of the pressure and the moment that we are facing for climate change. So we have a huge opportunity and richness about when we talk about mineral resource, and we also have a clean energy matrix so as to develop really clean projects that will help this transition. Also about sustainability, I could not mention the job creation. So the Brazilian mineral sector is facing a moment of steady growth. So we are being able of adding jobs day by day, and it's shown by this graphic, and that can bring this number of more than 20,000 new jobs added to the mineral sector in the recent time. So it's a 13% growth since January of 2020. And now I present some of our more recent initiatives that is about financing. So for you all that live in this mineral market. You all know that financing mining investments is not easy. It's a challenge worldwide. Even Canada, that has a very developed financial market for mining, in England, that has a very, very developed financial market, also face the challenge for financing the mining projects. And we are developing together with the market this initiative that we call Invest Mining, that it's a collaborative network for financing mining projects in Brazil. So we have already engaged all the main associations, the representatives of the companies. We had already a lot of banks also engaged with us, so as to bring to the market new opportunities, to make known the opportunities that we already have. So the credit lines, the funds that are applied in investing in Brazilian market, and also to develop new mechanisms to foster these investments. So it's a network focused on promoting the financing of mining activities, focus on expanding, diversifying mineral production, the number of mining companies. Here we have a target also for small and medium-sized companies. We strongly believe in the growth of production related to medium-sized companies, considering all the opportunities we have in Brazil. So, and also we count on a specific exclusive electric platform, so as to spread the results of this work and also be able to bring more partners for this. So we are working on three main fronts and work streams. So the first of them that we show here, it's about process and regulation improvement. So this network will be able also to share with the government their perspectives about improvements of regulation. We have also the work stream about financing mechanisms. That is the main goal of the network. So it will be working, as I said, to make known all the opportunities for financing the projects and to develop new orders and put together financiers so as to make viable the resource needed for also big investments. So we know that in this market, the bigger projects are mostly financed by a pool of banks and financiers. And we also bring a very strong focus on ESG in mining. So environmental, social, and governance investments is something Brazil is really making a huge effort to improve their companies. We already count on companies that invest a lot in social environmental actions in the community that's around the products. And we are very pleased to put the actors together so as to focus on this plan also. And I'm very enthusiastic about building new financial products so as to improve investments in ESG also. And we are gonna offer, we're bringing to the market a project hub. So we are building a portfolio of projects that will be able to present to these financiers and to the market so as to accelerate the use for making available new investments in Brazil. For my closing remarks, I'd like to state that Brazil has a great potential for mineral exploration. We already have and are completely well-positioned to discover new world-class reserves. We count on a clean energy, scientific and technological competence, diversified industry, and more risk-taking investors. Brazil is facing, I'm just going to talk a little bit of our macroeconomics. Brazil is facing huge changes. We were able to approve some reforms, some fiscal reforms that make us a country with a completely different financial market, more focused on real assets, on risk-taking, and on putting value to run in the market. So it's a great moment, and we really expect that Brazil will face and experiment years of really a boom of investments. So we are preparing for this boom of investments. And this is done in an harmonious, transparent manner, in constant dialogue with the various instances of government, the business community, and the society. This was the speech of our Minister of Mines and Energy in the inauguration. And I also like to point, because this is what this government is doing. So I was remembering that in the last PDAC that was presented, was 2020, I was there, and I remember that we in the Brazilian Mining Day brought the slogan of the dawn of a new era. And now I could say that it's the time of growth. So thank you very much. I'm in your disposal for Q&A.
Secretary, thank you very much. Very concise and objective presentation. Very encouraging to see some of those key points. I think in the brief Q&A session, we'll be able to explore some of those points. But without further ado, I'd like to please pass the word over to Mike Hodgson, CEO of Serabi Gold, so he can tell us a little bit about Sarabi Gold's footprint and experience in Brazil, and how he sees the challenges and opportunities in the sector. Please, Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. And thank you, Secretary, for those words there. Good morning to everybody there in Brazil. Yeah, Sarabi Gold, we're a small, high-grade gold producer in the north of Brazil, in the state of Pará. We're operating one particular mine, producing about 40,000 ounces, so it's quite small by Brazilian mining standards. Underground mining, which again is quite unusual in Brazil, so we are a little bit of an anomaly in the mining business there. That said, we've been in the country for a long time. It's originally a private company and now a TSX and an AIM-listed company, and has successfully succeeded in a part of Brazil which has been traditionally quite difficult, the Tapajós in southwest part of Pará. It's an area that was quite the access was difficult, the infrastructure was limited, and we've seen some great changes, particularly with the Bolsonaro government. We've seen the road paved, which has happened after sort of many, many years of difficult access and infrastructure, etc. That's really come a long way, and that's certainly made life a lot easier for us. We're actually in the process of permitting and just starting our second mine, which will be a similar size deposit, so we're going to double our production, and I think that's really important. It's we've been in this region for 15 years, and I think it shows a strong commitment of the company and the investors to this part of Brazil, traditionally an area that's quite undeveloped. And although we're a small producer, I like to say to people that we're a small fish, sorry, a big fish in a small pond. We are very significant, and I think that was borne out in our recent public hearing to get our preliminary license for Coringa, our new asset, by almost unanimous support by the local people. You know, the people want us there, very much so. We've put a lot of money into the region. We actually employ 600 people directly. I think we probably bring another sort of double that number for indirect jobs. So as I said before, being a small producer, but a significant producer in a part of Brazil which is very underdeveloped and underexplored. I also say that this part of Brazil is a great place to do business as well. It's the remoteness has perhaps worked to our advantage in the sense that we don't have a lot of competition there, and probably that remoteness has kept a lot of competitors away. but it is an area that's seen 30 million ounces of artisanal gold produced in the last sort of 40 years. And that gold has come from somewhere. So the hard rock potential to find the sources of that artisanal gold is still there. And I think we can see that we've got some bigger companies now in the region. And I think with infrastructure improvements, and I include power in that, which I want to talk about a little later, this is going to be the key to unlocking the potential of this area. And I'm absolutely convinced it's an area that's going to be a major mineral sector in Brazil's portfolio of mineral exploration, development, and production in the years to come. And on that point, so we certainly have enjoyed a successful time. It hasn't always been easy, admittedly, and I think we do face a little bit of a cultural challenge in the sense that the mining industry in Brazil is very dominated by large companies, open pit mining. So with that, the image of mining is all about scale and size, and it also means that the professionals that we actually need in our company, being a smaller, more selective type of mining approach, are quite difficult to find. But we do manage to do that, and I think we are building a real reputation of being a successful, small, quality producer in the region, which we're certainly going to replicate. As I say, we certainly see ourselves very much not as just a Brazilian mining company with mostly UK shareholders, but also a Pará state mining company. So really showing a commitment to the region, and we think we've got plenty of opportunity in and around us to actually continue doing that going forward. I'm particularly, one thing I will like to say, and I probably don't know if we want to talk about this at this moment in time, but I was really pleased that the Secretary brought forward the comment about the amount of clean energy, green energy that's produced in Brazil. That's great, and we all know about that, and it's wonderful. And as I say, we are in the Tapajós. We're providing local jobs to people. We're bringing in a lot of tax revenues, and we are working in a part of the country where it is difficult, without doubt. There are challenges, sort of staying complying with all the regulations, etc. But one thing I will say is that we are under huge scrutiny now with many of our UK funds and potential funds regarding ESG and actually using green energy. It really is important. And, we've seen today from the Secretary's comments, how green Brazil's energy is. But we don't really get a lot of that, unfortunately. I think a lot of the problem particularly in the north of Brazil, is the transmission. It's not the generation of the energy; it's the transmission of the energy. And and again, the lines that we've got, the power lines we've got, are in a very precarious and fragile state. And as I say, for us to really move forward and really sell what we're doing, particularly in this region of the Tapajós, which has huge potential, tapping into that green energy is only going to come with an overhaul of the power transmission in the region. Now, there are a lot of plans ahead, but I'd really like to sort of maybe throw this to the Secretary during the Q&A session, how we can get support from the federal government with this and say bring green energy to this part of Brazil, and with that, it will really untap the potential. So that's a very important point, and certainly one which I'm, particularly with the Glasgow climate change discussion conference we've just had, it's absolutely at the front of everybody's minds. And I think there's a real opportunity here for us to actually find a way forward to actually and use this momentum that's going on to actually sort of access green energy for all in this part of Brazil as well. I'll leave it at that point. I know we're sort of tight for time, so I'm going to, in the interest of the other speakers, I'm going to zip it to that point. And thank you very much.
Fantastic, Mike. Thank you very much. Really positive to hear about your journey and Sarabi Gold's experience in Brazil. Very important for others to learn and to really be able to find out the secrets of the success for their own experiences or plans or considerations for Brazil. Very poignant points also on ESG and energy transmission connectivity. We can explore that in a little while. I'm already seeing from a mining committee perspective of the British Chamber, this conversion of interest and needs to discuss these issues with the ministry, and it's already a priority for the secretary as he's mentioned. So I'm sure into 2022, we will be able to develop these discussions as well. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jonathan Dunn, Head of International Policy and UK Government Relations for Anglo-American Group. Please, Jonathan, over to you.
Thomas, thanks very much indeed, and thanks to Britcham for giving us the chance to contribute to the conversation. It's really great to be alongside the Secretary and alongside others. It's also great for me personally to be speaking to Britcham again. The last time I did so, I was wearing a rather different hat, different stage in my life, when I was the British Consul General in Rio during the Olympic and Paralympic Games. So it's really nice to be back with Britcham again, albeit virtually, obviously, this time. And let me just take a few moments, if I can. Thomas mentioned at the beginning that we joined the mining committee of as a company of Britcham earlier this year, and we see that as a really good opportunity for us to play our part supporting the development of a closer partnership between the UK and Brazil when it comes to this crucial sector. Some of the issues have already been touched upon, but it's worth reiterating some of the things that it's really valuable to work in partnership on. Things such as safety, sustainability in all its forms, which obviously leads into the question of ESG, governance. Questions of governance are crucial, and all of that, how all of that and more contributes to our social license as an industry to operate. So in the next few minutes, I'd just like to do three brief things. One, to give a quick overview of the Anglo-American Group. Some of you may know us very well, others may not. Dive a little bit more into what we're doing in Brazil, and then finally pick up a couple of the points, if you like, that's the point of this session around what the opportunities and perhaps some of the risks are with ongoing investment in the sector in Brazil. So who's Anglo-American? Well, we're one of the world's largest diversified mining companies, headquartered in London. We are the most diversified of the majors, meaning that we don't depend on any one commodity for a very significant proportion of our revenue. So we produce copper, we produce nickel, iron ore, metallurgical coal, platinum group metals, and through the De Beers Group, diamonds. And then quite recently, we added fertilizer to the commodity mix when we acquired a company here in the UK, which will start producing low carbon organic fertilizer later on in the decade. As I said, we're listed in London and headquartered in London, but we have our history and our roots are South African, where we were created over 100 years ago, and where we still have a very significant presence. We also have operations in the neighbouring countries of Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe, as well as in Australia and Canada. But the country where we have the longest unbroken presence after South Africa is actually Brazil. We've been active in Brazil for almost 50 years. And in recent years, we've increased our activity in Brazil and other South American countries. So aside from Brazil, our copper business is headquartered in Chile, and we'll open a very large new copper mine in southern Peru next year, which is the most significant greenfield investment in copper production globally for some time. And we've got exploration activities across the continent, including through an office in Ecuador. Now, all of our work, from early stage exploration through the development and creation of projects, right through to the marketing and sales of our product to our customers, is governed by our purpose, which is very simply to reimagine mining to improve people's lives. That means we recognize the centrality of mining to human progress, but we also recognize the importance of continuing to evolve mining practices to ensure benefit for all. And this is brought to life for us through our sustainable mining plan, which states specific stretching targets for all our operations in the areas of promoting a healthy environment, thriving communities for all, and aiming to be seen as a trusted corporate leader. Now, I could go on and on about that for some time, but I won't. But if you're interested, there's plenty more on our website. Now, in Brazil, I noted our 50-year history. This includes the most recent of our new mines before the Peruvian copper mine opens next year, which I mentioned before, which is our integrated Minas Rio operation, which is in three parts. It's an iron ore mine, a high quality iron ore mine in the state of Minas Gerais, in the municipality of Conceição do Mato Dentro, which is then linked via the longest pipeline for transporting iron ore slurry in the world down through the state of Minas Gerais to the port of Açu in Rio de Janeiro. It has a production capacity of about 26 million tons a year and is a fantastic operation. The second operations we have are in the state of Goiás, which are producing nickel, in fact ferronickel for the stainless steel industry, and produce about 44,000 tons a year of ferronickel. Now, just one important point of context, which will be relevant when I talk about the opportunities and the risks we see, is about the length of the life of those assets. Our nickel operations, for example, have at least another 15 years of life. And Minas Rio is one of the longest life assets in the Anglo-American group, where we think we probably have another 55 years of operations in Minas Gerais. So when we're thinking about investments in Brazil and elsewhere, we're thinking with that kind of very long-term time horizon. Finally, before I move on to those opportunities and risk, we're also very active in exploration across Brazil, including in projects in Mato Grosso and Pará, and we hope very much that they will make use of the excellent geological potential, which has already been mentioned, which I'll come on to. So opportunities and risks, well, when evaluating a mining investment opportunity anywhere in the world, there are essentially two main ingredients. One, the geological potential, and two, whether that geological potential can be realized in a sustainable and economically viable way. Now, the geological potential and opportunity in Brazil is extremely significant. Now, God is, as we all know, Brazilian after all, and the mineral opportunities there are very, very significant. But we would see there's a huge opportunity in conducting further research to understand even better what the potential has. I understand that less than 5% of Brazil has actually been properly geologically mapped. The second aspect, is it possible to develop a geological resource sustainably, depends to a large extent on non-technical risk. What is non-technical risk? It means human factors. So in that regard, excuse me, we really welcome some of the changes recently, which the Secretary mentioned, some of these, such as the creation of the Agência Nacional de Mineração, because that provides a real focus for the regulatory development of the sector, which is really important. We also welcome the inclusion of mining within the country's strategic development agenda, as a recognition of the fundamental role that mining has to play in Brazil's future economic growth, something we believe very strongly in. It's already been mentioned, but it's worth reiterating that not only has mining always been the basis of human development, but as we look to the energy transition, the low carbon transition the world has to go through, mining has an absolutely fundamental role to play in providing the metals and minerals which will facilitate that transition. And the creation of new laws that was also mentioned, and more rigorous standards in operational safety, such as the National Tailings Dam Safety Policy, are really welcome. We must, as a sector, do all we can to ensure that there's never another disaster, such as the ones we've seen in recent years. However, the specificities of the mining sector with immovable operations and very long time horizons means there's also scope for improvement. There's always scope for improvement. To conclude, I'd highlight two, if I may, and one of them Mike's already spoken very eloquently about, which is the question of infrastructure. Now, in a country the scale of Brazil, infrastructure is always going to be a challenge, but the weaknesses can and do, I think, hold back exploration, they hold back smaller projects, and they hold back development more widely. So a focus on different aspects of infrastructure, be those roads, be it energy, be it water, be it other things, would be really helpful. Secondly, and I welcome some of what the Secretary said, but the question of consistency, simplicity, clarity, and timeliness in permitting is really crucial. Robust permitting, we believe, is absolutely vital to ensure that the sector operates at a standard that every citizen would expect. But the challenge in Brazil comes, we see, from the complexity and sometimes contradictory nature of regimes established at municipal, state, and federal levels. At best, such complexity slows down the development of projects. At worst, it makes them unviable, as investors are really unable to judge fully the risks that they might actually face. So to conclude, Thomas, if I may, the geological potential is clear, huge, and can be made even clearer. And with clarity, consistency, and timeliness of policy, it can really help boost the mining sector going forward and investment in the mining sector, which we're looking forward to being a part of. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And it's great to link back in your speech to points raised by the Secretary. It's really important. The Secretary mentioned those points about predictability, stability, and consistency. So clear institutional alignment about the priorities in how to develop the sector. Conscious of time, we've got officially 11 minutes left. But with the Secretary's permission, I think he has a little bit more time if you run over by about 5 or 10 minutes maximum, no more than that, to make sure people in the UK can stick to their lunch engagements, and in Brazil, the rest of the day's work ahead. So I'd like to open up to a brief Q&A session for us to direct some questions and discussions with the secretary, with Pedro. So for this, I'd like to firstly introduce someone I mentioned to previously, Adriano. If you're there, here with us, if you can please appear. As I said before, and to repeat, Adriano is our Vice President of the Mining Committee and a distinguished Brazilian lawyer and internationally in the mining sector. Adriano, please, if you may ask the first question to the Secretary, and following Secretary, if you could please answer. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Thomas. It was a pleasure to hear the presentation of the Secretary Pedro Dias, and as well as the comments provided by Mike Hodgson and Jonathan Dunn on the respective projects or operations in Brazil and the challenges that sometimes are faced. As Thomas just said, I am based in Brazil, but I just happened to be in London for some meetings. And interestingly, in those meetings, I heard one particular question many times from different persons, from different investors, which is there is a move in some countries in Latin America that may be perceived as a move not very friendly to mining. And there were some specific mentions to Peru and to Chile, which are very traditional jurisdictions in mining. So I wonder if the Secretary can explore that a little bit and perhaps tell investors whether that is a regional trend or whether that should not be considered a regional trend, and how Brazil can still welcome investment in mining, and particularly in the context of a bill or a proposal for a bill that is being considered at before the National Congress, before the House of Representatives. Thank you.
Secretary Pedro, are you with us? If you
Yes.
are, okay, please feel free to answer.
Okay, so thank you for all the questions. I was looking also at the written questions here and the Q&A written questions, and I'm gonna try to answer. And actually, in the start, I'd like to thank Mike for the question about energy infrastructure, because and I'd like to show, if I can, one slide about what we're expecting for investments and transmission lines also, but in the energy sector as a whole. So this is the planning. We've already invested a huge amount of money in transmission lines. We kind of doubled the capacity of transmission in Brazil since 2010. So, and now we expect 23% more growth and transmission lines for the next years. So it's happening aligned with the reforms that we've been making, not only in the energy sector, but also in logistics. I don't know if you heard about a recent program called Pro-Trilhos. This program is focused on trains and the ferroviary system. So we are very proud of a reform that will enable, will make it possible for the investors to build new lines of trains and new railways in the country. So we really expect a huge amount of investment. I'll be able to bring this in a new conversation because I'm not with numbers of memory here, but I know they are very large. We had a talk about this in the last week with our colleagues of the Ministry of Transports. And I would also like to point that about water, we are facing a reform that's already in place about our water system too. So we are opening the market and are being very successful in some auctions to deliver this service to the market. And we have already had in these auctions a compromise of investment of very huge numbers. It's expected for all the system, talking about water and sewage. It's about $700 billion until 2040, if I'm not wrong. And I can bring these numbers more precisely to you in a next conversation also. So Brazil is really making the reforms we need to deliver a more infrastructure more able to these projects. So I'm going to stop sharing here and try to address other topics. So when talking about the Brazilian rules and policies and some questions that were here about what might be going on with our regulations, I may assure that Brazil is facing a different moment of a very business-focused mind, I could say, shared by all our politicians. So when talking about modernizations, we are really talking about improvements and keeping those premises that are very relevant and important to keep the certainty for the market. So it's something we don't accept any move back, and it's shared with our congressman. So we had also a very good talk this week with some of our colleagues in the Congress, and we may see how this engagement that I brought in my presentation is also present when talking about the congressman and the federal government, states government. So we're really conducing our strategies and policies, focusing on enlarging the investments in Brazil and creating a most well environment for business in Brazil. So I, of course, as Jonathan said, there are always improvements, and we are strongly working on these improvements now. We already made a lot of them, and I really appreciate to receive you there and the secretary to hear about the challenges that companies face so as to make bigger investments in Brazil. This is our focus. The doors are opened, and I really hope to hear you soon and to talk about what is needed, what is missing, maybe to more huge investments of your companies and worldwide in Brazil. So thank you. I don't know if I could answer all the questions. I received one about running that I'd like to address. because the question was if Brazil will have uranium for its internal market. And I'm proud to say that we will have not only for our internal market, but our reserves and the exploration that we've been made leads us to not only supply our internal needs for energy, but also to be a great exporter of uranium. So Brazil is one of the countries with the bigger reserves of uranium in the world, and for sure in the years to come will be also an exporter. So thank you. If you have any other question you want me to address, feel free.
Secretary, thank you very much for that. And thank you also for addressing Mike's point and also showing us that graph in terms of ongoing future energy investments, particularly in transmission lines. I think that's very important information to share. If I may, Secretary, just if we could field one final question, as you've answered Mike and Adriano, if I could pass the word over to Jonathan, please. I believe you have a question you'd like to ask the Secretary.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. And thanks very much, Secretary. You've touched on this a little bit already, and there was a question in the chat about this as well, which is the question of essentially the fiscal regime. I mentioned in my remarks the importance of kind of consistency and stability in regulatory frameworks. And we understand entirely the challenge government faces between balancing revenue generation, especially in the context of the pandemic, but more broadly as well, and promoting investment. But given issues for us, such as fluctuation in commodity prices, the long life cycle investments that we're looking at, I'd be really interested in your views as to how to balance these demands in the context of the ongoing discussions on both tax reform and potentially royalty increases. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, of course. Brazil is making a huge debate about tax reforms now, not just to simplify our tax system. That is, I must confess, it's very complicated, and every politician recognizes that, and we are working on simplifying this. So we have at least two proposals of tax reform in the Congress being discussed now. And we also have one reform directly for income tax. So that's the one that moving forward, and I think it's in its final stage of discussion. And it's one that reduce the tax income for the companies by I think the original product, it was a reduction by at least 10%. And really in this movement of making Brazil a best place to international investments, and actually align our system to what already happens and with what works in other countries. So we are at this moment discussing these reforms. The government is engaged on pathing and on really approving these reforms, and our congressmen are also committed to reduce, how I could say, these obstacles for investment related to taxes in Brazil, not only for the complexity of this, but also trying to reduce the tax income for the companies. So it's a main goal for government. I'll be able to bring some news for you, I'm sure, and I'll be very happy to do so. And it's our great effort there in the secretary to, and I'd say for all the mineral sector, to show to the market, to other stakeholders, more broadly, how the market, the mineral markets work, about the cycles, so as they may understand, as you said, Jonathan, the long term of the projects and how challenging already is to have to invest in a long-term project already because of the market cycles. I think we have a responsibility on that, and we are addressing this not only with other companies, states, and governments, but also with our congressmen.
Secretary, thank you very much for that. Yeah, I think we'll now move on to the concluding remarks, if I may, Secretary. Firstly, thank you so much for your time, Secretary. We're very grateful for your time and to be able to engage with you and your team and the Ministry of Mines and Energy as a whole. It's a first discussion we've had in terms of the British Chamber of Commerce and the Mining Committee with you. I hope it's the first of many. Please count on us, Secretary, on the Mining Committee to support the development of the Brazilian mining sector and to build these important links between British and business community in the sector. I think for me, some of the key takeaways, Secretary, was certainly a tremendous and fundamental focus on ESG for the government, for Sarabi Gold, for Anglo-American, and for the sector as a whole. I think important reflections on infrastructure, logistics, and energy connectivity, and also stability and predictability, which is so important for the mining sector, given the decision-making for investments is so long-term. So we'll be looking and hopefully be able to explore that in the coming months and year ahead within the Mining Committee. And if I could just reinforce some points mentioned by Ana Paula at the beginning in terms of the British Chamber. You know, it's the Chamber this year is hitting an important landmark of 105 years of existence in Brazil and continuous activity. And it's a really important forum for business discussions. And more recently, even regionalizing even more with chapters opening up in Minas Gerais, in Paraná, and in other states. I think that's very important for a continental-sized country such as Brazil. I'd like to especially mention Alexandre Aroeira Salles, who opened the Minas chapter with the support of the British Chamber Board, for his work also in supporting the establishment of the Mining Committee. And I think for the mining sector, that's fundamental, having a regional and national reach, because the opportunities are in each and every state of the country, from Minas Gerais to Pará to Bahia, Goiás, and other states such as the south of Brazil as well. And I think an opportunity we have as the Mining Committee as a whole is collaboration with other committees of the Chamber, the Infrastructure Committee, the Tax and Legal Committees and Energy Committees, because there really are some cross-sector issues that need to be addressed in an integrated and cross-sector fashion. So I hope that we can do a deep dive into some of these themes in the coming months. Please count on us for that, Secretary, and to all those following us on Zoom and YouTube. I think there was a message in the chat for our esteemed colleague from Britcham, Fabrício, our executive manager of Britcham in Brazil, who's shared his contact details. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. Reach out to Fabrício if you want to learn more about the Chamber's activities, learn more about how to sign up and become a member. The team is at your disposal. And finally, thank you to the partners, to the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in the UK, to Canning House, to the Department of International Trade from the British government. We couldn't have put this together without you, and to all the team at Britcham who made this happen. And Secretary, a final remark. Obviously, we monitor the evolution of COVID restrictions, and as and when travel is more feasible, perhaps we can arrange a visit program for you to the UK. I think it would be great for you to be able to engage with the UK mining community, investor community face to face, and perhaps in 2012 we can explore that. But once again, thank you very much. Have a great morning to those in Brazil, and a great afternoon and a great weekend to all of those in UK and all those following us. So thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Thomas.